This is Greg Kelly. Donate now to Toys for Tots, which works year-round. Go to toysfortots.org. Toys for Tots supports children in need throughout the year with programs like the Toys for Tots Literacy Program. Established in 2008, it has provided over 63 million books to disadvantaged children. The Toys for Tots Literacy Program is committed to providing disadvantaged children with direct access to books and educational resources that enhance their ability to read and communicate effectively. Go to toysfortots.org.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
People love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Well, there is more bad news for embattled War Room host Steve Bannon. After the Conservative Political Action Committee announced that Bannon would be a featured speaker, there was almost a universal panning of that decision in light of the recent Department of Justice emails that clearly demonstrate that Steve Bannon had an intimate relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And while he was posing on the air as a fierce Trump supporter and an advocate for full disclosure in the global elitist doings of Epstein, he was in fact, according to these email addresses, plotting openly to rehabilitate Epstein, talking to Epstein about removing Trump from the presidency under the 26th Amendment and potentially replacing him with a globalist Mike Pompeo. Bannon bragged openly about placing John Bolton, the neocon warmonger, who was never a great fit for Trump's cabinet. So what you have, a cat turd who says CPAC now has no credibility, Brendan Dilley of the Dilley media team, Warlord Dilley himself says, this is why your garbage brand won't be around in 5 years. Pathetic, grifting con men, all of you. Miguel California says, confirmed, CPAC has no issue with Steve Bannon befriending convicted pedophile and sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. Good to know. He tagged American Conservative Union Chairman Matt Schlapp. Jamie Mitchell says, ain't no way. CPAC just did something even Bannon's best friends didn't do and committed suicide. Cynthia Holt, I know this lady from New Jersey, she says that she asked, why is CPAC giving a platform to Steve Bannon at CPAC USA 2026, despite his well-documented close personal relationship with a convicted sex offender, child sex trafficker, and child rapist Jeffrey Epstein. I first tracked the fact that after he got fired by the Trump White House in 2017, the New York Post reported seeing Steve Bannon entering Jeffrey Epstein's palatial home. At that time, I think it was, and may still be, the most valuable or highest valued single-family home in Manhattan. And I knew that there was some kind of dialogue. I would then read additionally in the European press that Bannon popped up at Epstein's Paris apartment. Now, from these documents released by the Department of Justice, we see that it's highly likely that Bannon also visited the island. We see Jeffrey Epstein himself instructing his staff to book a commercial flight for Bannon to the U.S. Virgin Islands, where a small plane is to pick him up. Epstein is quoted as saying, Steve is staying with me. So I don't know how Mr. Bannon expects to explain this. I knew that they have a near revolt. I know a lot about the Conservative Political Action Conference because, back in 2011, I convinced a guy named Donald Trump that he should speak there. The Conservative Political Action Conference is probably the single most influential gathering of conservatives, or at least it used to be, starting in 1974. Ronald Reagan spoke there famously. In 2011, I engineered an invitation to Trump, who was thinking about the 2012 nomination. And at that time, many viewed Trump as living in wicked New York. They knew that earlier in his life he had given contributions to Planned Parenthood, and he had voiced some support for same-sex marriage. Those are both issues that he would change over time as he became older and more conservative. But he was a smash hit at CPAC, and it really, I think, is the first time many saw the Trump magic within a political context. And what's interesting about Trump's remarks that day were he criticized our NATO allies for not paying their fair share. He said the trade deals like GATT and NAFTA and others had been great for our trading partners, but not great for the United States. He complained that our military was being allowed to atrophy. He was right about that. He talked about waste, fraud, and corruption in government. He's proven entirely correct about that. So his consistency over time is really, to me, very surprising. I don't know whether this furor over Bannon dies down. There's a piece out today from Art Voice, which is a left-of-center publication, but makes the case that Bannon's financier, one Miles Guo, a Chinese nationalist, pled the fifth 50 times in a criminal prosecution when asked whether the money he provided to Bannon came from the CCP or about the role of one William G. In the transfer of these funds. William G. is clearly identified on line open sources as a CCP party functionary. And then out of that same prosecution, where Miles Guo, who was the financier of the Bannon media empire, including evidently Real America's Voice, was prosecuted in a $1 billion fraud, a fraud that Art Voice, a piece by Frank Parlato, insists that Steve Bannon is very deeply embedded in. Now, Bannon, in the end, is an unindicted co-conspirator, but there are no charges against him, which is extraordinarily strange when you look at the size of the theft here, almost $1 billion. But what's even more interesting is that the telephone records from the case show that Bannon talked to this William G., who, by the way, is now a fugitive from justice, some 132 times. So why is Steve Bannon talking to a CCP functionary 132 times? It is in itself fascinating. Also, the enormous amount of money that Bannon pulled out, according to this piece at Art Voice. I mean, in essence, Guo purchased $1 billion audience by paying $35 million to form the website Getter. That was a Bannon Guo project. Another $57.6 million flowed from entities controlled by Guo's financial architect into Bannon-affiliated operations. So Steve put at least $57 million in his pocket. Then there was another $270,000 wired directly to the War Room Broadcasting, another $250,000 to Bannon Strategic Advisors for advisory services. Another $500,000 moved to an entity the bankrupt trustee identifies as a central payment hub for other Bannon-related media operations. So it is absolutely clear where the money was coming from. A source with direct knowledge of the operation said Bannon received multiple individual checks of $500,000 from an additional company called Soraka, a media entity connected to Guo's operations, beginning in 2018, a year before the FBI would ultimately raid and arrest Guo, but not Bannon. That happened on Guo's yacht. The source says there are several such payments and that they were distinct from the $57.6 million traced through the bankruptcy filings that ended up in Steve Bannon's pocket. So, according to Guo, he fled to China in 2014 during an anti-corruption. He kind of styled himself as an anti-CCP dissident, but other times he would attack Bannon for attacking the Chinese Communist Party in various videos. At one point he says the CCP is great, they give you the tools to make your money. The man who built $1 billion following on anti-CCP cement, it was openly pro-CCP in private. Communism, he said, is better than capitalism, he told them openly one day. Capitalism makes lazy people work 40 hours a week, while communism makes you work. So the questions as to where Steve Bannon's financing coming continue. Again, I stress that Guo, when asked under oath if his money was CCP money, pled the fifth, which is not proof that it is, but it is certainly a reasonable question. In the meantime, we are watching Donald Trump assuring the nation that that he is cognizant of the need to clean house when it comes to the regime, although I think he has used American power in a very limited and measured and lethal way. It is undeniable that the Iranian regime is still firing rockets and drones, still trying to block the Straits of Hormuz. The U.S. Navy has now finally been given orders to clear a lane through the Straits of Hormuz. We know that the Iranian Navy was very badly damaged earlier, and it appears now that U.S. ships have been given authority to sink ships that would seek to impede the payment through the Straits of Hormuz. Party General Michael Flynn said on my Sunday show that the U.S. Navy would make short work of this if it became necessary. But as you know, that is the choke point for 40% of the world's oil, and it has, of course, been responsible for this bump up in the cost of gasoline, which, of course, Democrats are celebrating about, because anything they think hurts Trump, they don't care about how it hurts the nation. I do think that this will be a blip. In fact, if anything, the way Trump has used oil as a political bargaining tool, political and economic bargaining tool, is really quite extraordinary. He is now in the catbird seat in this hemisphere because in one fell swoop he got control of Venezuela's oil, which puts a real hurting on Cuba, and also 80% of their output was going to China. So when they say, oh, this is all about oil, well, yes, and the geopolitical use of it. By denying cheap oil to the Chinese, by denying Iranian oil to the Chinese and the Russians, he is waging a massive blow against their abilities. The idea that China would even think about moving on Taiwan when they have an immediate shortage of oil shows you the brilliance of Trump's long-term foreign policy. But the way he combines military strength in a projected way, economic pressure and leverage, and diplomatic openness in a three-part foreign policy. We haven't had this kind of foreign policy since Nixon played the Chinese off against the Russians in order to get a strategic arms agreement for the United States. You're listening to the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone. We'll be back with all the political news on the other side, so please don't go away.
Crazy about it, shine as me.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
He likes politics and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone. Where's Roger?
the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
Roger Stone, who's one of the smartest political minds. Roger Stone was persecuted. People forget he's actually a brilliant political analyst.
Now, get him his own. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Tonight should be quite an evening. I have the honor of being honored for the Florida chapter kickoff of the Italian American Civil Rights League. That's from starts at 6:30 tonight. You have to be a member in order to attend. You go to iacrl.org. Now, this is a nonprofit organization. We have no overhead. Everybody involved is a volunteer. But what we do is we stand up for Italian American heritage, dignity, and our cultural pride. We know that there are those out there on the left who like to erase the accomplishments of great Italian Americans in every field of endeavor, whether it was politics or whether it was sports or whether it was the arts. Italian Americans have played a very substantial role in making this country great, and we're very mindful of this effort to erase Christopher Columbus from our culture. The left tried to call Columbus Day Indigenous Peoples Day. President Donald Trump issued a new and updated proclamation in which he said we would stick with Columbus Day. And one of the things we do at the Italian American Civil Rights League is when a city, a left-wing city, tries to remove a statue of Christopher Columbus, like the 76-foot monument that stands in New York City, a 14-foot marble statue, or the one that's in Central Park, or Columbus Square Park in Astoria, Queens, or the statue of Christopher Columbus at Columbus Park in Brooklyn. If anyone seeks to remove any of those, we would be in court in a heartbeat. That's the kind of good works we do. I'm honored to be honored tonight and to look forward to seeing so many friends. There's a lot of Italian Americans out there, but I think it was Tony Fabrizio, the president's pollster, told me the subgroup of Americans who voted for Donald Trump by a greater percentage than any other demographic in the country was Italian American males. And there it is. I'm looking forward to a few meatballs tonight. Maybe I'll see you there. You're listening to the Stone Zone. I'll be right back.
About as sharp as me. The white diamond ring, I ain't missing not a single thing. Love rings.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
He likes politics and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone. Where's Roger?
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
Roger Stone, who's one of the smartest political minds. Roger Stone was persecuted. People forget he's actually a brilliant political analyst.
Now, get him his own. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
You know, I think the Democrat Party's biggest problem they have going into both 2016 and 2028 is that they have no bench. Their front runner, strangely enough, would have to be Gavin Newsom, and that's only on paper now. Newsom is a Gettys from one of the wealthiest countries in the world. He also, as the governor of California, he can extort the special interests for millions of dollars of campaign funds. And as I told President Trump the other night at Mar-a-Lago, he does have good hair. I said great hair. The president had, well, good hair. Reagan had great hair, he said. He's right about that. But I mean, his record is abysmal. So what is he doing? This is really incredible. You can't make this stuff up. He's going to spend $19 million in new taxpayer money on a marketing campaign designed to improve California's image nationwide, despite the state facing a projected $3 billion budget deficit. and being the world's largest outdoor toilet. The homelessness issue, the open drug use issue, the tax issue, this is a public relations disaster. But worse than that, they are just missing or have now established potential that $54 billion that was supposed to be spent on housing has literally disappeared. Another $30 million in COVID-related programs. Appears to be another $30 billion in other healthcare frauds. This money has simply disappeared, and I don't know how you run for president when you have no records to run on. The high tax nature of it makes economic development and job creation impossible. The state so over-regulates everything environmentally, it is literally impossible to build anything. Crime is soaring, housing costs are soaring, taxes are sky high, and it is a scandal a day in Gavin Newsom's California. I'm kind of reminded of when Michael Dukakis, the governor of Massachusetts, ran for president. I guess it was against George Bush. His slogan was, "He'll do for America what he's done for Massachusetts," and that's what people were afraid of. And then, of course, you have J.B. Pritzker. Now, J.B. Pritzker is rich. He is incredibly rich. He's so rich that he literally owns every facet and every back alley of the Democrat Party in the state of Illinois. He finances the campaigns of all the statewide office holders. He finances the campaigns of most of the state legislatures. What we didn't tell us was that he was taking almost $20 million into his so-called trust fund in contracts to companies that he owned, and that he had taken another $40 million in state contracts in other companies that he owned that were outside his blind trust. I never understood this concept. I mean, Dick Cheney was the head of Halliburton. He gave that job up to become vice president. He put his Halliburton stock into his quote-unquote blind trust. He lied us into the Iraq War. Suddenly, his Halliburton trust became worth hundreds of millions of dollars more. How is his trust blind if he knows that it's there? It is amazing that Gavin Newsom thinks that he can bamboozle the people in the country with some slick television campaign. This is being done through the Governor's Office for Business and Economic Development, which is currently seeking a private contractor to run this national messaging campaign. The plan is a taxpayer-funded public relations effort for a state and government struggling with serious problems like high crime, soaring housing costs, sky-high taxes, a scandal a day, and an ongoing exodus of both residents and businesses. And the money that's spent on, again, it's really to puff up the public image of Gavin Newsom. It's not really about California. You saw Kristi Noem run into problems when it turned out that the Department of Homeland Security had given a $220 million media contract to on a non-bid basis to a company that had been formed just a few days before that, transferring $183 million of that to a company called the Strategy Group, which was owned by the political consultant who ran Kristi Noem's campaigns for governor, and another $20 million non-bid award. The award went to a Louisiana-based firm that certainly appears to be affiliated with Corey Lewandowski. So this became a major factor. Those ads, of course, if you saw them, had Kristi Noem riding a horse at Mount Rushmore. At some we're supposed to be cutting waste, fraud, and corruption. This kind of self-important image making, I think, was clearly designed to build some kind of political base. If you saw the Real ID calls, that TV commercials, they are they were Kristi Noem to camera. I expect now there will be a gigantic investigation at the Department of Homeland Security because it is very clear that the secretary misspoke or perhaps she lied before the committee when she said that her paramour, longtime lout and fired Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski, had no role in the agency's contracting, but substantial email and text messages surfaced to show otherwise. It is widely known that Lewandowski functioned as her de facto chief of staff. They bought $300 million worth of aircraft for the use of the secretary, including one with a James Bond-style bedroom, I guess, so they could join the Mile High Club. President Trump evidently was not aware of this upcoming expenditure. There is a report, I think, in the UK Daily Mail today that says Corey Lewandowski is quoted as saying, "I can do whatever I want. Trump will pardon me." I'm not so sure about that, but I think at this point the only way that Kristi Noem could recoup is dropping back and challenging the senator from South Dakota, whose name I believe is Steve Rounds. Rounds is one of the least talented politicians I've ever seen in a state like South Dakota, where Trump probably has an 89% approval rating. To be an anti-Trump Republican is extraordinarily foolish. But I've said this many times before. Our problem today is not the left-wing socialist Marxist Democrats as authoritarian and vicious as they are. Our problem are the gutless, feckless, weak-kneed, lily-livered, white wine swilling, country club belonging establishment Republicans who just don't have the belly for the fight. They want to get reelected. They want the trappings of office, but they don't want to investigate whether Joe Biden was taking bribes as vice president, and they don't want to investigate whether Dr. Anthony Fauci was lying about taxpayer financing of the weaponization of the COVID-19 vaccine. They don't want to know whether Bill and Hillary are lying about their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. That certainly did not work out well. I believe, based on my own sources, and I wrote this in my book, The Clintons' War on 2015, I believe Bill was actually having an affair specifically with Ghislaine Maxwell. She was not, of course, underage, but the idea that Bill never visited the island, that is false, according to the sworn testimony of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, one of the victims who refused to pay Epstein, to take millions from Epstein and settle her lawsuit against him, went on to sue him, testifies that she saw Bill one night at a party, and that Epstein had flown in two 17-year-old sisters for Bill's amusement. She admitted she did not see any direct sexual activity between them because she said she was removed from the party by Epstein in order to service someone else at his direction. But that is one of three women who all testified that they saw Bill on the island. When Virginia Roberts Giuffre asked Jeffrey Epstein why Bill Clinton was on the island, Epstein smirked and said, "Let's just say he owes me a favor." Hillary said they had no links, but in fact Epstein provided the seed capital for the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Global Initiative. Hillary said that Bill was only on the Epstein plane a couple times for his charity. That couple turns out to be 27, and I've never seen Charity, so I don't know much about her. It is also true, of course, that Epstein was a major contributor to the New York Democrat Party, major contributor to Hillary Clinton, and Ghislaine Maxwell is an honored guest at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. So this idea that they had no links is of course an absurdity. The timeline here is important. Trump cuts Epstein off in 2004, late 2004. That is before he's exposed and ultimately prosecuted in the Florida sex case, in which he got a lesser charge and a shocking slap on the wrist, and of course the period in 2019 when the Trump administration charged Jeffrey Epstein with child sex trafficking and a second count of conspiracy to engage in child sex trafficking, charging Ghislaine Maxwell, but no one else with those same charges. That was in the Southern District of New York. Of course, Epstein was awaiting trial on those charges when he turned up dead. The family of Jeffrey Epstein hired Dr. Michael Baden, one of the most respected pathologists in the country, longtime New York medical examiner, a man who has seen many hanging cases. And Baden claimed in his assertion that the breaks in Epstein's neck were not consistent with the manner in which it was described that he had been hung. Today there's a breaking story of one of the two guards suddenly having a $5,000 financial windfall just days before Epstein was killed. We're expected to believe that both guards both fell asleep, that it was on a night in which the cameras just didn't just happen to not be working. Now, we know that Epstein retained famed criminal defense attorney David Schoen because under the law, no matter how heinous you may be, you're entitled to legal representation. He hired Schoen the Thursday before his death, agreeing to pay him a retainer of $1 million to begin the relationship, and then allegedly killed himself 2 days later. It makes very, very little sense. We also know that Epstein had complained about being assaulted by another inmate. Why they would not have Epstein, a criminal of this fame, in a case of this controversy, why Epstein would not be alone in a cell under guard 24/7 is a bit of a question. The public fascination, I think, is running out with Epstein as they continue to come up empty-handed. The left is reduced to creating fake AI videos that somehow implicate Donald Trump, pointing to the fact that some unidentified person called an 800 tip line and claimed that they were raped by Donald Trump when they were 13 years old. Of course, they didn't leave their name or any specifics, and an investigation found there was nothing to this. But of course, the media will recycle that over and over again. They don't want to tell you how many times Treasury Secretary Larry Summers went to Epstein's Island. You're listening to the Stone Zone. Go away. We'll be right back.
The Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
He likes politics and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone. Where's Roger?
This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
You know, I was shocked last week when I read these new stories that a FBI whistleblower has come forward to say that the agency was monitoring a phone call between Trump campaign manager Susie Wiles and her attorney at the end of the presidential election. That would mean that they were spying on President Donald Trump's campaign for president yet again. The same source said that they were monitoring communications, the communications of Kash Patel, who would later become an FBI director. It reminded me that in that same time frame, the FBI approached my attorney to tell me that my own emails had been compromised, particularly my email traffic with members of the Trump campaign, of which, frankly, there wasn't much because that was not my preferred method of communications. And I wondered at the time who would seek to do that. The FBI assured us that it was specifically the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. They were very specific. But I wondered at that time whether perhaps it wasn't the FBI. They spied on Donald Trump. They used falsified evidence to justify it. And the idea that they were spying on Susie Wild, this is shocking, and I'd like to learn more about this, because isn't that what they ran Nixon out of town for, the spying on his opponents? So, and now I wonder whether those so-called intrusions in my own email, see, they explained it wasn't the content of the email that was interesting, that they were interested in using your email as an outgoing vehicle for a phishing link, that if a target clicked on it would give whoever was doing this access to their entire computer. I think a number of members of people of Trump's campaign were targeted with these phishing links, but I know nothing about that. I do know that you should conduct your personal communications on the theory that everything you do, say, or listen to, or write will someday appear on the front page of the New York Times. It is, but that is the world we live in. It is amazing, again, just looking online, the way this Steve Bannon going to CPAC story is caught on fire. Bannon's views at the War Room reportedly now down to 7,624 views in last night's show. This is a show that used to get hundreds of thousands of views. And I think really the issue here is hypocrisy. Don't say on your TV show that everything should be disclosed about the Epstein records and the global elites should be exposed, and then when they are, find out that you are one of the global elites and that you are coaching Epstein on how to erase the predator sexual image, telling him swiftly to lie if he's asked about the age of the girls he's pictured with. He should say they look young, but they were of age, which Bannon knows, of course, is not true. At the meantime, he is leaning on Epstein to hook him up with all of his international schemings. I mean, look, I like the president of Brazil, the former president Bolsonaro. On the other hand, I really think Steve Bannon's tutelage of his campaign may have cost him re-elections. It would not be difficult to see the level of cheating that took place in that election. It's ironic that a member of his own family is now leading in the polls over the socialist, if not Marxist, government. But at a time when Argentina and Chile and Honduras and now Venezuela and all these other countries are moving right, Bolivia, Paraguay, they're all moving right. The only country in the continent that's moving left is Brazil. Very, very strange. We pray for the former president and for his family, but they are on the wrong side of history, and they will soon see that. Then, of course, all eyes are tied to Cuba. Everybody in my wife's family certainly focused on Cuba. President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio clearly up to something, both on a diplomatic and perhaps a more offensive front. But now that they are being denied that cheap Venezuelan oil, it is a major pressure on the regime. Cuba Libre, perhaps the regime is finally going to fall. Listening to The Stone Zone, I'm Roger Stone. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy.
Download and subscribe
at BeBullish.com.